couple of just housekeeping matters, I believe, and one more substantial issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Your Honor, we have provided the state with the final version of Mr. Knox's presentation. I did prepare it in two forms. One is with a set of diagrams showing the 6 shots not moving, static, 2D diagrams showing his opinion of its effort to aid him in his demonstration or his testimony. Those are attached to his presentation. We can put those up on the screen if you like, Your Honor, for you to see. We'll just show those last diagrams, please. No, I'm sorry. I want to start with the first one of the cards, please. Sorry. That's right. I believe it's the next one. Last set. Yes, please. Is that the first one? Okay. If we could just look at it really, you're on man, sit just so I can see the screen.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. This is showing the bullet strike on the rear door, the JSO marked as number 4. If you go to the next one, please. And this is showing the bullet strike that JSO on their tag on the door had indicated was number 5. The next one is number 6. And again, it's marked by JSO. And then the next 3 will be 7, 8, and 9. They are static. They are not moving. It is to show the movement of the Durango as it reverses, and to show the relationship between the bullet strike and the driver's window, which all of the testimony has been that that's where Mr. Dunn was seated at the time that all of these 6 strikes were fired into the Durango. I think that the testimony throughout the trial has been clear that the cars were parked normally, that they were not skewed, that front seats were aligned.
Can you go back to the first
Yes, sir.
photo?
Yes, sir.
Problem number 1 is the Durango is further back than the, I guess it's called the Volkswagen or the Jetta. And I don't know what scale that is, but clearly the Jetta is pulled forward more so than the Durango.
Yes, Your Honor, the reason for that is based on the testimony of all of the occupants of the car that testified that the front seats were lined, not that the edge of the hoods were, but the front seats, which is so that therefore the fact that one had a longer hood perhaps than the other, using the front seats is being lined up with each other, which is what the testimony would fit that testimony. And I don't believe there's any contradictory testimony to that. And so we did that to be consistent with the testimony we expected to be elicited. The trial was elicited from all the witnesses.
Did your expert do diagrams aligning the front ends of both vehicles?
They are all just as you see them, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay. So I've seen them.
And, Your Honor, we're going to, first of all, renew our desire to have the initial presentation that Your Honor had ruled on in the pretrial hearing. To use that initial presentation, I'm just renewing my objection based on the arguments previously made. And at this time, I would seek to use these diagrams instead based on the court's ruling.
Okay. Mr. Guy?
And Judge, I would again object. For many of the same reasons I objected the first time. This is a new diagram. Again, I need to sit down. I can't.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's fine.
I apologize.
Not a problem.
The cars have moved. Now, you're right, that one is further ahead than the other. Also, for some reason, the Jetta is now slightly angled, with the front end being lower than the back end, which was not previously the case, but more significantly, the testimony has been very consistent throughout, including Mr. Dunn's testimony, which I expect to come later, that the cars were so close that the doors couldn't be fully open, and that's not depicted accurately in the diagram. So for those reasons, and the reasons I previously stated in the case law that I cited in the state's motion in limine that the court previously granted regarding the use of these as either exhibits or demonstrative evidence, I would object to any of those being shown to the jury.
Your Honor, if I may just respond to that briefly. It is going to be our witness's testimony that the distance between the cars, and he'll explain why, it is not ultimately relevant to his conclusion that the car door was open to some degree. And so therefore, many of the reasons that Mr. Guy stated in this argument that the cars were skewed, that the testimony showed that the cars were perhaps skewed or have not come out in this trial. Many of the factual reasons that he gave in his initial objection have not been borne out by the testimony. So we think that these are an accurate representation based on the testimony that's come out in this trial, and therefore we seek to use them.
Well, while I disagree, I think there has been testimony from if not all, at least one of the occupants of the Durango, the gentleman who was in the front passenger seat, that he could not open his door all the way. That diagram right there would look to me like that door could open all the way and still have room between the door being opened all the way and the Jetta. Also, I think Ms. Rauer testified that the cars were very close together. So while I wouldn't normally say that a diagram of this nature would be objectionable, because this is such a crucial issue, and these are rather subtle differences, if you will, I guess, I do have a problem with it, because now the Jetta is angled away from the Durango, and this photograph of the Durango is completely parallel into the parking place. And again, maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. But now the Jetta is not completely parallel. It is skewed a bit to the right, which gives a greater distance between the driver's door and the Durango itself, and the distance between the driver's side and the passenger side of the Durango, I do not think is accurate with the testimony that's been presented thus far. I wouldn't, and I don't know how fast he can do it, if he were to modify these yet again, then I'd be more inclined to let them in. But the way that is, that one there, I'm not inclined to let that one in. And I'd have to see the next one to see if it is the same issue. Can you go to the next one?
Yes.
Yeah, the vehicles, all right, no. The first three, which references the shots to the passenger door, the vehicles don't move at all, so same problem with all three. And then, quite frankly, the next three, I'm not sure how particularly relevant it is. Yes, the Durango's backing up, and it's pretty commonsensical, I think, that those three shots hit the vehicle as it was backing up. But go to, is that the third one there? Is that number one? That's the third one. Go to the fourth one. Whoop. Go to the next one. No, well, start, I guess, start with what I would call the first one with a shot to the rear passenger door. and then you've got 3 shots there, and then I'm guessing then you're going to the front door.
That's the first one you're looking at right now, Your Honor.
Okay, go to the next one. Okay, next one. And then the following one. Yeah, and then that goes back to Mr. Guy's arguments before that now the rear door has mysteriously closed. Which I'm not sure how he's going to explain that.
Well, Your
The
Honor-
worry I have is this. What we have to this point is more realistic and actual evidence, and that is photographs of the vehicle itself with dowels running through it. I mean, you're not going to get much better than that, I guess, unless you use lasers or something. This is just not that. And I don't have any problem with your expert testifying as to, you know, what he thinks and what he believes, because it's going to be based on a variety of assumptions that then can be questioned or challenged. But to actually put that into evidence, I just have a problem with it. So that to the extent there's an objection as to that, it's sustained. Those 3 photographs won't come in, and I don't know if you really need the other 3. Were there 6? Yeah. Again, I for the same reason that I denied the video and the animation, if you will, because in essence a lot of it was the same type of objection, I'm going to deny these as well. But that's not to preclude him from giving testimony that would
Yes.
back up his theories.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, I would move several things into evidence. 2 of them, just to preserve the record. One would be whatever, I don't know how the clerk would want to mark it. This would be the original presentation with the 3D that Your Honor had already ruled. Just wanted to put that in.
All right, so that, just so we're clear, that should have 6 photographs, I call them photographs, 6 diagrams, no, I think in my order I called them animated diagrams, and that disc would also have on it the video
Yes,
of
sir.
the animated video.
Yes, sir.
So we'll receive that as Defense Exhibit A for identification purposes and for record purposes.
Okay. And Your Honor, this, I would also move the new presentation with the diagrams, again, for purposes of the record. I guess that would be Defense B.
Yeah, and that one will just have 6 diagrams.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then I would next move this into evidence as, and I believe this would be with stipulation since it is without those diagrams, the remainder of the presentation, and that would be, I believe, which should be marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 51 in evidence. And that's the disc containing the presentation without the diagrams into evidence.
Mr. Guy.
I don't believe I have objection to that. I think those are all photographs that are already in evidence, that he's now just incorporated into.
Well, and I don't know, did it have a drawing of the front of the gate station with the width of the, and maybe that's already in evidence too from the state, I don't know.
It does have a drawing that he created that just shows the measurements, but I
Yeah.
don't believe that there's anything objectionable, but stay on that.
No, I'm just saying I didn't know that that was already in evidence in some other. Okay, so the 3rd disc will be received as Defense Exhibit 51.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I believe that the clerk had previously been given a disc with Defendant's Exhibits 1 through 50 that we provide, that are photographs, that we provided to the state. If they have not been previously moved into evidence, we would move all of those into evidence. But again, I believe that's with stipulation.
It's not. We objected to, I think, 6 of those photographs, and my understanding was that that's took them out. Okay. So it wouldn't be quite 1 through 50, I think it'd be 1 through 44.
I apologize.
I'm sorry, they have what?
One person at a time, please. So it should be 1 through 44? No. Disabled.
Judge,
We did not know that the state hadn't stipulated, so we had already gotten in 50. So there is an exhibit 50, it had already been introduced in evidence. So there is about 3 or 4 numbers around mid to late 40s that are empty slots.
Oh.
And I checked with the clerk, and that's the way that we had to do it.
Well, the question is this third disc, does it just go up through 44, let's say, or 43, whatever it would be?
What we could is put these new discs into those empty numbers to make it all cohesive.
Well, no, 2 of the discs are going to be exhibits A and B because they're not in evidence. Those are just for the record because
Yes, sir.
they have been denied. The other disc we could put in there as 1, but we're only going to, it doesn't matter.
I think that we should just keep it as.
Yeah, I just worry about the one disc that you say has 1 through 50 on it. Does it really have 1 through 50 on it, or does it only have 1 through 46 or 44?
My understanding is
It's only 46 photos.
that they're numbered. Is that, am I correct?
One of them is 50 because the state
Okay.
objected after we'd already put number 50 in
Okay, but-
through a witness.
But the ones they objected to have been pulled out of that
I have taken
disc.
those out,
Okay.
yes.
Again, that's that high technology stuff, you know. If we just had the photos, we'd be dealing them like cards, I guess. Okay, well, as long as everybody's good, but I don't want to get a disc in evidence that's got things on it that should not be on it. But you're okay with that, Mr. Guy?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Judge, I just wanted to give you Mr. Knox's deposition.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I'll address this now, then during the course of Mr. Knox's testimony.
By the way, let me hand those back to the defense. I don't think I need those. Okay.
Thank you. Since Your Honor has indicated that Mr. Knox can certainly testify as to his opinions in these matters, but we have also prepared by use of an easel. My expectation would be to call him off the stand and have him demonstrate to the jury the old-fashioned way the different scenarios and why he thinks what he thinks, and I don't think that there'd be any issue with that.
Not that I can think of. I mean, unless Mr. Guy can think of something that
Judge, I'll just have to go with it when I see it.
right. I mean, he's just going to hand draw a couple of vehicles where what he describes as vehicles next to one another, and I suppose he's going to draw a line from the driver's side over to the passenger side, and in essence try and recreate what was already on these other drawings, but obviously then it's very obvious to the jury that it's not something to scale, that it's just something he's drawing to try and explain what he thinks and why he's drawn the opinion that he has. That other one just, it to me, could carry much more weight with the jury and it shouldn't. So, but yes, ma'am, an easel works.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We're ready to proceed, Your Honor.
All right. State.
Does we need to break sidebar?
Okay. With the court order?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, it was brought to my attention that Mr. Strolla is here, who was Mr. Dunn's counsel during the course of the first case. And while we asked jurors during jury selection if they knew any of the lawyers here and if they had any knowledge of the first case, nobody ever brought up Mr. Strolla's name. And his name's not going to be brought up during the trial now, but there was a concern that perhaps a juror might look out into the audience, see Mr. Strolla, and somehow recognize him, trigger a memory that, oh, I remember that guy from somewhere, maybe the first trial. Probably pretty far-fetched, but in any event, the defense has indicated that they don't have any problem with Mr. Strolla obviously being in the courtroom. Is that correct, Ms. Abel?
That's correct, sir.
And then I want to ask directly of Mr. Dunn, given that little bit of background, do you have any objection or problem with Mr. Strolla being in the courtroom?
None at all, Your Honor.
And to the extent that if somebody, a juror, did look and see and recognize him some way, shape, or form, that would certainly not be something that you could then object to, because in essence, you're waiving that by allowing him to be in here.
Understood.
Not a problem, right? Okay. All right. So now are we ready to proceed?
I believe so, Your Honor. Yes, sir.
Okay, bring the jurors on in then.
Jurors entering courtroom.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all can have a seat. Hope you had a nice lunch. Sorry for a little bit of a delay getting going. We sometimes have housekeeping matters that we have to take up that take a little bit more time than I anticipate. So, but in any event, we're now ready to proceed. Ms. Hanania?
Your Honor, the defense would call Michael Knox.
Michael Knox, please. Mr. Knox, if you'll come to the front for me, please, sir. And if you'll raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath to you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you should give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, sir, if you'll come right around this way for me and have a seat. And you can adjust that microphone as you need. Just be sure to speak directly into it loudly so everybody can hear you.
All right, thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hanania.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Well, my name is Michael Knox, and that's K-N-O-X. I'm a forensic consultant here in Jacksonville.
And sir, what specifically does that mean when you say that you are a forensic consultant?
What I do is actually reconstruct crime scenes, mostly shooting incidents, and traffic accidents for clients. Pretty much most of my clients are attorneys.
When you say that most of your clients are attorneys, does your work as a forensic consultant here in Jacksonville include work that you've done for both the state attorney's office as well as defense attorneys?
That's correct.
And sir, are you paid for that work?
Yes.
Okay. And were you paid for your work in this case?
Yes.
How much were you paid?
Well, I think in this case we had capped amounts at a total of about $6,500, which is payment to my company, which is then, I draw a salary from the company that covers all our other expenses as well.
Sir, are you currently, have you done work in the past for the state attorney's office as an expert witness?
Yes.
Were you paid for that work?
Yes.
Are you currently listed as a state witness, as an expert state witness in a pending state case?
Yes.
Sustained.
Sir, how long have you been doing this work as a forensic consultant?
It's been my full-time job since March of 2010.
What did you do before that?
I worked for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I was a police officer and detective for about 15 and a half years.
And sir, what was your assignment as a detective for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office before you left that post?
Well, I worked as a crime scene investigator for 7 years, and then I was a traffic homicide investigator for my last 3 years.
As a crime scene investigator for those 7 years for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, what did you do, sir?
What I did is, in the crime scene unit, you're responsible for the documentation of evidence, collection of evidence, and evidence processing, like for looking for fingerprints and collecting blood samples and things like that from crime scenes.
And as part of your duties there with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, in addition to working on cases yourself, did you teach in any fashion?
Yes.
And who did you teach?
Well, I was the training coordinator for the crime scene unit from 2003 until 2007, which is when I went to traffic homicide. I've also taught classes outside of the sheriff's office for other agencies, for training institutes and so forth.
And those training institutes that you've taught at, are those nationally recognized training institutes?
Yes.
For instance?
One of the main ones I teach for is it's called the Institute of Police Technology and Management. It's actually a training division of the University of North Florida that puts on training courses for police all over the world, here locally, but also on the road in other places.
And you've taught for that institute?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, and when you've taught, have you taught in the area of crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, I teach like for IPTM. I'm their main instructor for shooting incident reconstruction. In fact, I just taught a course a couple of weeks ago in St. Paul, Minnesota, teaching that course. I've also taught crime scene reconstruction and shooting reconstruction and other crime scene topics with other agencies and in fact in several other countries as well.
Sir, are you a certified crime scene reconstructionist?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what that is?
The organization is called the International Association for Identification, which is one of the largest forensic organizations. They have a number of different certification programs, and one of the areas that they do certification in is crime scene reconstruction. What you do is you have to have a certain amount of experience, a certain amount of training. You apply for provisional status, and then once they've reviewed your training and experience, you sit for an examination. It's 300 questions. And then after you finish that, you do I think it was about a dozen or so practical, where they give you photographs and you have to answer questions related to that. And if you pass all of that, then you get the certification.
And sir, nationwide, how many people are certified crime scene reconstructionists?
Last I checked, it was 16. That number could be a little bit higher than that, but less than 20.
Okay. And you are one of those number?
Yes.
Sir, in addition to having taught, are you published in the area of crime scene reconstruction?
Yes.
And are those in peer-reviewed journals?
Yes.
Explain to the jury what a peer-reviewed journal is.
Peer-reviewed journals are used a lot in scientific fields, where basically if you write a paper for a particular journal, that goes to several reviewers who are experts within that field, who then review it and determine whether or not it's suitable for publication. So what I actually have is several that I did with the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, which dealt with ballistics and shootings and shooting reconstruction.
Okay. Sir, have you previously testified as an expert in the field of crime scene reconstruction?
Yes.
How many times, approximately?
Probably approaching 100 times. I don't have an exact count, but it would be dozens and approaching 100.
Okay. In what courts have you testified as an expert in this field?
Throughout Florida, this circuit, as well as Tallahassee, Pensacola, West Palm Beach, Daytona, several other cities around Florida. I've also testified in state courts in Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, or actually it was federal court in Alabama, state court in Mississippi, state court in Texas, and a federal court in Illinois and Chicago.
And when you say this circuit, do you mean in all three counties, Duval, Clay, and Nassau counties of our circuit?
That's correct.
And have you been accepted by the courts as an expert in the field each time you've been tendered as an expert?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tender Mr. Knox as an expert in the field of crime scene reconstruction.
Mr. Guy?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I've advised you previously, and now, Mr. Knox will be declared to be an expert in the area of crime scene reconstruction. Expert witnesses are like other witnesses, with one exception. The law permits an expert witness to give his or her opinion. However, an expert's opinion is reliable only when given on a subject about which you believe he or she to be an expert. Like other witnesses, you may believe or disbelieve all or any part of an expert witness's testimony. Ms. Hannah.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Knox, would you first start by explaining to the jury, what do you mean by crime scene reconstruction?
Well, in crime scene reconstruction, what we're basically doing is putting the puzzle pieces back together. You're doing it without a box top, so you don't know what the picture is supposed to look like, and in most cases, you don't have all of the pieces. Basically, what we do is we start with what I call the investigation stage, which is just information gathering. That's when you just gather the data, whether it be on scene, if you're in law enforcement, or whether it be through documentation that others have gathered about the crime scene. Once you have that, then you begin to look at the individual pieces of it to figure out what does it mean. You look at things like bullet trajectories, you look at fingerprint evidence, DNA evidence, what are the results of that, so forth. And then the final part of that is the reconstruction. That's when we take all those pieces, you put it back together, and you figure out what took place, and you try to answer specific questions about how a particular crime took place.
Now, because you are reconstructing a scene, would it be fair to say that you're not in an opportunity to respond to a crime scene immediately after it happened?
That's right. I mean, about the best I ever get is maybe within a month or two of it happening, I'd get contacted. And in some cases, it can be years down the road before I actually become involved in the case.
Is it because of that, sir, that you rely on materials that are generated by the law enforcement agencies or other official agencies that initially investigated that crime scene?
That's right.
To some extent, at least.
That's right.
Okay. In this particular case, sir, were you asked to do an analysis of the crime scene?
Yes.
And what question were you seeking to answer in that analysis?
The main question that I was looking at is the issue of the right rear door to the Durango. What position was it in when it was shot? There's bullet holes that passed through that door, and so we were looking at what position was the door, and was it fully closed? Was it open? And was it in some particular position when it was actually shot?
Okay. Did you receive information to aid you in that analysis?
Yes.
What information did you receive?
We got, of course, the crime scene photographs, all the photographs that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office took, medical examiner's photographs. We collected...
Your Honor, if I may, I apologize. If I may briefly approach.
Sure.
Thank you. I apologize, Mr. Knox.
Court reporter, please. Ms. Hanania brought to my attention that she had given Mr. Knox materials, some of which was transcripts from the prior trial for him to review. And Mr. Knox, we just want to make sure, she may have told you, but we want to reiterate it. Do not refer to a prior trial, obviously. If there's some reference, just say a transcript or something like that, or if we can kind of gloss over that, just so we don't get into a position to have something come out that shouldn't.
And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You probably knew that, but just so we're all clear. Okay, so bring the jury back in. I guess when I tell them a minute, they really think it's going to be 5. Just like I saw somebody say, when the lawyer says 5 minutes, it's really going to be about 10 or 15. We good? Okay.
You're in the courtroom.
All right, thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt again, but we're ready to go. Ms. Hanania.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Mr. Knox, for having interrupted you. Would you just generally describe to the jury the materials that you received at the start of your analysis of this case?
Right, as I was saying, we had obviously the crime scene photographs that JSO took. We had the medical examiner's photographs, medical examiner's report. We had the crime scene reports and crime scene diagram, reports from JSO, things like that.
All right. Sir, having reviewed those, did you then undertake your own analysis of the physical evidence of this case?
Yes.
Or whatever physical evidence you felt was relevant?
Yes.
And what physical evidence did you think was relevant for your analysis?
The primary thing for us to examine was the Durango. That's the vehicle that actually had bullet holes in it, and that's the main evidence that I was focused on, because those bullet holes would allow me to figure out relationships between that vehicle and where the shot was discharged from.
Okay. And did you have the opportunity to actually examine for yourself the Dodge Durango in issue in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And what analysis did you perform when you examined that Durango?
What we did is we obviously take photographs and look at all the bullet holes and examine everything to see what's there. Then what we do is take trajectory rods, which are we use basically fiberglass dowels. They're long, about 4 foot long dowels, and you use it to go through bullet holes that have passed through the vehicle or into the vehicle and determine the direction that bullet was headed when it actually struck the vehicle. Then what we do is, once we've figured those things out, we use laser mapping equipment. It's similar to what surveyors use, so if you see them on the side of the road. And we plot in the perimeter of the vehicle, and then we map in all those trajectory points so that we can determine the actual angles and heights and everything of all the bullet holes and the trajectories associated with those.
Sir, did you also take measurements as a part of your analysis of this case?
Yes.
Did you take the measurements of the Dodge Durango itself?
Yes. What we actually do is plot the footprint of it.
Okay. So you personally, as part of your laser mapping measurement system, and by the way, sir, this laser mapping system that you used to plot the points and therefore do your measurements, is that the same laser mapping system that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office uses?
Yes.
Okay. For their work, when they're analyzing in their role is in crime scene investigation for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, crime scenes?
That's right.
Okay. So you measured the length of the Durango, the width of the Durango, the size of the car doors. Is that right, sir?
That's right.
Did you measure the height of the seat, especially the rear passenger seat?
Yes.
Did you measure the extension of the rear passenger door?
Yes.
Did you determine what that angle is when it was fully open?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also determine the measurements of the parking spaces at issue?
Yes, I did.
Having done all that, sir, did you prepare photographs and slides documenting your work to aid you in explaining what you did to this jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would at this time publish
Okay.
Defense's Exhibit Number 51. Sir, can you see on your screen the first photograph?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Now, let's take a look at that. First of all, who took this particular photograph?
This is one of the sheriff's office photographs.
And is it true, sir, that a number of the photographs that you relied on and that you reviewed as part of your analysis actually are photographs that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office took themselves?
Yes.
And so this is one of them. And what does this depict?
Well, this is the parking lot of the gate station, and what you're seeing is the condition of it after police have arrived, where everything was positioned, and there's some yellow placards that they've started to put out, and crime scene tape and so forth.
And would this be what's called an establishing shot, just to show us where we are?
That's right.
Okay, all right. If you'll go to the next. This is the second of the slides in Exhibit Number 51, sir. Is this another of JSO's photographs of the scene on the night that this incident occurred?
Yes.
Okay. Based on both your expertise and your time with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, what does this photograph represent?
This represents, this is the crime scene as the crime scene investigators are beginning to progress through documenting the evidence. What they do is these yellow placards are used to mark items of evidence. And the reason being is a lot of times you're talking about small evidence that if you step back and take a picture, you wouldn't really see it in the picture. So the placards allow you to identify the locations of it in the photograph, and those numbers would carry over to other things like the crime scene diagram or the investigator's report.
And so, based on your information, both for this photograph and the crime scene diagram that was drawn by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office crime scene detective, were you aware that these items depicted casings and projectiles that were associated with this shooting?
Yes.
Okay. And what is this particular slide, sir?
This is actually the diagram that Detective Keppel with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office drew of the crime scene. So it's a diagram depiction of what you just saw in the prior photograph.
And in this diagram, sir, I believe that a legend was included. It shows the Dodge Durango and its position when it returned to the gate gas station after the shooting. Is that right, sir?
That's right.
But it also shows the grouping of the items 1 through 6 and the legend which identifies what they are.
That's right.
Okay. According to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, these were locations of the casings and projectiles. How did that aid you in your analysis in this case?
Well, primarily what I'm looking at is just the position of where the fired cartridge cases is consistent with the scenario of the two vehicles being side by side and the shots being fired from the parking space on the right towards the parking space on the left.
Is there a precise pattern that casings are ejected, in which casings are ejected from a firearm?
there's a certain pattern, but it's generally not something that you can narrow down and say they're fired from this very spot based upon where they end up. There's a lot of factors that go into it. One is that you'd have to know that, in fact, the final rest positions are where they came to rest. They haven't been kicked or moved or anything like that. And the other is that even knowing that that's exactly where they came to rest, the spread is fairly wide. You could be looking at anywhere from close to where the shooter's standing out to 15, 20 feet, and a pie slice, basically.
If you'd go to the, I'm sorry, that was, no, that one right there. Thank you. This is the fourth of the slides within number 51. And if you would move on to the next one and then back for me. Now, Mr. Knox, based on your experience as a crime scene detective with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, this photograph that we're looking at right here, would this photograph have been taken in your experience with the use of a flash because this was a photograph taken at night?
Yes.
So this particular level of lighting that's reflected in this photograph, would that necessarily reflect the true level of lighting at the scene at this time?
No, this is artificial light. In fact, you can see the reflection of the flash off the window right there. So this is done with a camera flash.
Would you circle on the photograph? Oh, I'm sorry, you did that. Thank you, sir. All right, and if you'll clear that for us. So the next photograph in your slide, sir, is taken from farther back. Is a flash still being used in this particular photograph?
The flash is still being used, but what happens is as your distance increases, the light falls off, and so you don't see the effect as much. If you look at the ground close to the camera, you can see it's quite well lighted, and then as you get further back, it's not nearly as lighted.
So, sir, the area, do you see the white truck that's noted in that photograph, sir?
Yes.
And would that area that we've been talking about, where the casings and the projectiles, all those photographs, would that be to the right of that white truck?
That's correct.
So let's go to thank you. Now, this photograph is included for what reason, sir?
This is just a little closer view to show that where the Durango ended up after it was brought back to the parking lot. So now it's to the left of the white truck, and you can see that there's some evidence on the ground.
And sir, would this support or corroborate information that the decedent in this case was removed from the left side of the truck?
That's right. Yes.
If we could go to the next. Now, sir, what are you documenting excuse me, let me back up. Did you take this photograph?
No, this is still one of the photographs that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office took.
So does this appear to you, or was this represented to you to be one of their actual crime scene photographs?
Yes, this is actually from the scene.
So this would document the condition of the front passenger window while it was still at the scene of the Gate gas station?
That's right.
Your Honor, I'm asking if he knows what this represents based on and I believe it's already been introduced into evidence by the state.
Well, it does call for speculation sustained.
Okay. Mr. Knox, regardless of when it was taken, we'll come back to that in a moment. What can you tell us about the front passenger window in this photograph?
Well, what you can see by the condition of the window is that obviously the glass is shattered. There's no actual bullet hole in the glass in this area, which would mean that one of the shots that went through or into the door is what shattered the glass, not one going through the window itself. But we can also tell that this window was not fully up at the time because at this top edge right here, there's window tint material, and the piece of glass, section of glass from the top is actually folded over and it's hanging down inside the door.
If we could go to the next slide, please. And sir, is this next slide in Defense Exhibit number 51, does that illustrate the point you were just making about the glass folding over?
Yes.
And why does it fold over instead of just completely shatter?
Well, in this case, what's happened is this section is being held by the window tint material. Normally, if you have safety glass on side windows of automobiles, once they're shattered, they'll stay together for a little while, but through either heat or movement of the vehicle, they'll end up eventually just falling out. But here, because it's fallen over, what that tells me is that this top edge was not constrained by the top weather stripping. Basically, the window goes up into that little groove in the weather stripping, and that's what would hold the top of the window in place. But instead, it was down to some extent enough that the top of it was allowed to fall over, and then the window tint is holding it in place.
So, sir, if this front passenger window had been fully raised, would we see this fold in this window like this?
No, I mean, given the fact that there's window tint material, it would be shattered but still intact. Everything would still be sitting there in the window frame.
Okay. And you indicated that the window was shattered, though there were no bullet holes or bullet strikes to the window itself. How would that have happened then?
There's actually on the outside of this door, there are 3 bullet holes. And so one of those shots, most likely the one in the middle of the door, penetrated into the door and shattered the glass that was down inside the door itself. And with safety glass, once you hit it with a bullet in any portion of the glass, the entire piece of glass will shatter.
Okay. And sir, if we could go back to yes, thank you. Sir, because of your time with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, are you familiar with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office warehouse?
Yes.
And what are we talking about with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office warehouse?
Well, there's actually 3 buildings in this warehouse complex. One of them is for vehicles that have been seized for forfeiture or things like that. Then there's 2 in the back. There's a smaller one that the crime scene unit uses for processing vehicles, and then there's a larger one that's used to store evidence vehicles.
Okay. And sir, as part of your work with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, did you actually work in these warehouses?
Yes.
And you're familiar with what they look like?
Yes.
Is this a photograph that was taken inside the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office warehouse?
This one here, no.
Okay. And if you could go back. I'm sorry, we can't go to the next one. Thank you. Now, let's go to I believe it's the 9th slide in Defense